June 6, 1944. The Normandy landings have begun. The German soldiers that are defending the coast, integrated into Divisions 709, 352 and 716, mobilize for combat at full speed. However, this series of weak divisions were not capable of repelling the invasion on their own, and could only be expected to hinder and delay the Allied landing operation for as long as possible. This defensive action on the coast would give time for the panzer divisions that were in the rear to be able to reach the landing beaches and then start a fierce counterattack. When the Allied invasion in Normandy began, the closest panzer division was the 21st Panzer Division, which was based in the vicinity of Caen. This was a very important city, because it was the axis of communications for the entire region, and it was through there that the Allies intended to leave Normandy to go to Paris. It is for this reason that the British 3rd Infantry Division, which had assaulted Sword Beach, began to move at full speed towards the city, as soon as it was able to neutralize the German defenses in its coastal sector. So, having stormed the beach in just half an hour, the British begin to emerge from the sand and enter the first French towns. While they are finishing neutralizing the German defenses in the area, reinforcements continue to arrive at Sword Beach, among which 3 armored brigades stand out, which will lead the march to Caen. Approximately, we can indicate that the beginning of this advance towards Caen, which was about 11 kilometers from the beach, began between 9:30 and 10:30 in the morning. Well, once we have seen how the situation was on the coast, let us now see what was happening on the German side, and how the counterattack of the 21st Panzer Division was, this being the only one that occurred on June 6. The 21st Panzer Division had already served under the command of Erwin Rommel in North Africa, and it was precisely there where, after hard years of campaigning, the division was gradually reduced until it ceased to exist. This led to the fact that in June 1943, the division had to be rebuilt in France from zero, and it would be there where it would remain waiting for the Allied attack on the spot. Although at first it had been located in Rennes, a few weeks before the Allied attack it was sent to Caen. Let us remember that it was approximately at the end of April and the beginning of May, when the Germans had indications that the Allies were preparing an attack on the Normandy beaches, and this led them to reinforce the sector. This panzer division was by no means the most powerful of those in the rear of the Atlantic Wall, but it was not one of the worst either. Thus, it had some 20,000 troops and some 150 battle tanks of all kinds, among which almost 120 Panzer IV stand out. They also include numerous material captured from the French, and which had now been converted for the division. In any case, this unit did not have the most modern and powerful Panther-type armor, nor did it have any heavy battalion with Tiger reinforcements. As a curiosity, his general, this being Edgar Feutinger, was with his lover in Paris on the day of the invasion, although it was of no great importance since the entire command was delegated to his subordinates, who knew exactly how they had to act. The 21st Panzer Division was made up of 4 main regiments, and another series of loose assault gun, anti-aircraft or engineer battalions. At the time of the Allied attack, these were distributed as follows. First of all, Panzer Regiment 22 was located 30 kilometers south of Caen, with 2 panzer battalions with good material. The 125th Regiment of the famous Colonel Hans von Luck was located to the southeast and east of Caen, and with its 2 battalions of Panzer Grenadiers, it was the first unit that entered into combat against the British paratroopers. Third, the 192 Regiment with again 2 Panzer Grenadier battalions, which had one of them in the southwest of Caen, and another north of the city just 10 kilometers from the coast. Finally, the 155th Regiment was with its artillery battalions also north of Caen, very close to the 2nd Battalion of the 192nd Panzer Grenadier Regiment. The first entry into combat by this division took place during the early hours of June 6, after the launch in the area of the British 6th Airborne Division at 5 in the morning. This action put the entire division on alert, although during the first hours there was much confusion, since no one knew exactly what was happening. Everything changed at 8 in the morning, once it became clear that the Allies had started a great landing in Normandy. So on this occasion, the division received the order to head towards the coast, to face the enemy soldiers who were disembarking. In addition, those units that were fighting against the paratroopers also received the order to go to the beaches around 10:30. Thus, both the British and this German Panzer Division were advancing towards the same point where they were going to end up colliding. While the British had to deal with the weakened remnants of the German 716th Division, the 21st Panzer Division had to deal with Allied aircraft, which attacked them all the way. One of the most important regiments in the division was the 22nd Regiment commanded by Colonel Appeln, which we remember was south of Caen at the time of the landing. During that morning, the German colonel had to skirt Caen with his panzers as best he could, and he arrived at the concentration area where other regiments of the 21st Panzer Division were around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Once most of the division was already north of Caen, its troops were divided into 3 combat groups. The most powerful and therefore most important Kampfgruppen was placed under the command of Colonel Appeln, and was located just north of Caen. The second was placed under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Rauch, and was a few kilometers to the west of Appeln's units. At this point, both received the order to advance north to face the British, although most of the weight fell on Colonel Appeln, to whom General Marx said the following sentence: "Appeln, if you don't succeed in driving the British into the sea, we will have lost the war." Finally, the third Kampfgruppe was that of von Luck, who was going to fight in the vicinity of the Orne River to prevent the British from crossing it. Thus, the attack of the most powerful combat group, this being that of Appeln, began at 4 in the afternoon, with about 90 tanks. However, they had not advanced more than 2 kilometers when suddenly the British tanks opened fire on them and caused the first casualties. Due to their air command, the British had detected the German movement and were waiting for them in defensive positions. This forced him to deviate to the left, in an attempt to flank the positions in which the British had entrenched with their tanks and anti-tank guns. Almost without realizing it, Colonel Appeln suffered the destruction of 13 main battle tanks, along with another 15 that were damaged, in exchange for only 3 Allied Shermans that had been lightly damaged during these early skirmishes. So without having achieved much, and seeing that the Allied superiority was total, at 9 at night more or less coinciding with sunset, the German colonel ordered his unit to return to the starting positions north of Caen. On the other hand, Rauch's Kampfgruppen managed to advance much further, and even reached the point of being on the coast, right between the landing beaches of Juno and Sword. However, this advance was of little use, and it had been possible because there were no Allied soldiers in that sector. Once they reached the coast and saw the magnitude of ships and enemy forces that were on their flanks, and that they were flying over them, Rauch gave the order to withdraw for fear of being isolated. At this point, we can assess that the counterattack by the 21st Panzer Division was a failure, since it did not achieve its objective of repelling at least the British who had landed in the Sword sector. However, they did prevent Caen from being taken, and bought time for other panzer divisions to arrive that were even more powerful than them, delaying the fall of the city for more than a month. This was the case of the 12th SS Panzer Division, which would begin to arrive in the sector that same night. Would you like us to make a program about the actions that this 2nd Division carried out? How do you assess the counterattack of the 21st Panzer Division during this first day of the Battle of Normandy? Do you think he could have done more than he did? Lastly, I would like to tell you that in the description you have the live program that we did with David Diaz about the actions of the Panzer Divisions throughout the Battle of Normandy. Thank you all for being part of this community, and especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and we'll see each other here as always, next Thursday and Sunday. See you soon.